Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the panel on Portugal in Space for Science and Exploration. My name is Rodrigo Ventura from Institute for System Robotics in Lisbon and from Técnico. And together with Marta Gonçalves and Manuel Wilhelm from Portugal Space, we are organizing this session. So in this panel, we aim at discussing the past, present, and future of these areas in Portugal, as well as the available and necessary tools to strengthen Portuguese participation at an international level. So thank you all for attending, especially to the panelists for accepting the invitation to be in this panel. Zita Martins, Pedro Machado, Nuno Santos, Patricia Gonzalez, Nuno Peixinho, Timothy Haltigin, and last but not the least, Mário João Monteiro, and thank you so much for accepting moderating this panel. And so, of course, we will ask the panelists to introduce themselves and their affiliation. Without further ado, I'll pass the floor to Mário. And let me just finish by sharing that it's a privilege to hear from you all in this panel, and looking forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Welcome all to this session. So it aims to be an informal session. So we will have the panel discussing some interesting topics on the past, present, and future of Portuguese participation in space for science and exploration. And I have the easy job to try to steer the discussion and leaving all the time to the panelists. All the participants, all the audience, please to switch off your video so we make sure that we do have internet band available for the panelists. You are welcome to place questions in the chat during the first part of this session, but we are going to reserve some time in the end where you will be able to actually ask questions live if you want, okay? So put your questions in the chat during the session if you have something specific on what is being discussed to add or to ask, to propose. And then in the end, if you have questions, we will have some time, probably not enough for everyone, but definitely for some questions. Okay? So we have a very diverse panel on this session. And we really want to cover some important aspects of Portugal, the key here also. You will see that we will probably spend some more time on these components. So it's solar system exploration that will be somehow trying to focus a bit more. So we will start by going around the panel. I will ask each one of you to let us know, and the audience in particular, who you are and what is your connection to this topic. Okay, so let's start by following the list. So I would ask Zita, please go ahead and let us know who you are.
Okay, so I'm Zita Martins. I'm an astrobiologist and an associate professor at Instituto Superior Técnico. And my connection here is a little different from the rest of the members of the panel. So I'm a chemist, completely different from the rest, but I'm involved with several space missions. So that's my contribution. Just to name a few, the ones I'm participating currently. I'm participating on the Yabusa 2 space mission. I'm also participating on the Comet Interceptor mission, so I'm the only Portuguese involved in that. I'm also part of the team of Ariel, and then I'm also involved in 2 space missions that are going to the International Space Station, OrioCube and ExoCube. So I hope to give my contribution to this panel from a different perspective, because as I said, I'm a chemist, so that gives a different perspective.
Good, thank you, Zita. Let's move to Pedro. Pedro Machado, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Pedro Machado. I'm a researcher at the Institute of Astrophysics and Space Sciences. I'm also a professor at the Faculty of Sciences of Lisbon University. So my background related with this panel, I was on Venus Express space mission on orbit of Venus, related with the Virtige instrument mostly. And from there to the present, nowadays I'm QI of the Ariel space mission. And I'm also invited scientist to the JAXA, so the Japanese space mission called Akatsuki on orbit of Venus. And I'm in my past years, very often I was performing observations from the ground, so ground-based observations based in the telescopes, and at the same time with coordinated observations from space, with Venus Express, Akatsuki, Cassini before, and also with Mars Express on Mars, obviously. So this is, so as you perhaps already understood, so I'm specialist, which is related mostly with solar system bodies. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Pedro. Let's move to Nuno Santos, please.
Hello, good morning. So I'm a professor at the Department of Physics and Astronomy of the Faculty of Sciences in Porto. My research is focused on exoplanet research, and I do it at the Institute of Astrophysics and Space Sciences, where I also coordinate the planetary systems team working in solar system and exoplanet research. So I have my connection, let's say, to space is mostly related with the leading roles I have in astronomical instrumentation as well, both for ground-based telescopes and space missions. I can name for ESO, Espresso, and IRIS for the ELT. In ESA, I can mention Cheops and the future Plato mission. And I think that's a good overview of myself.
Thank you, Nuno. So let's move to Patricia, please.
Okay, hello. I'm Patricia Gonzalez. I'm a physicist. I'm a researcher at LEAP. LEAP is the Laboratory for Instrumentation and Experimental Particle Physics. And I've been working in a space radiation environment and on its development of radiation detectors, modeling radiation environments in planetary bodies or space, and also understanding and predicting the effects of radiation in space in electronic components. We've had several contracts with the European Space Agency, including industrial partners and other research and development institutes in Europe. And in space exploration, what we are interested in and what we've been doing is on measuring and understanding particle radiation environment in the solar system. And this is especially important for human space exploration, but it's also important for robotic exploration due to the degradation of components and systems with the radiation. On top of this, we want to understand these problems of radiation propagation from different sources in the solar system. Currently, I'm working on a radiation detector, which is also a charged particle spectrometer with unique capabilities that will be flying in the next big, large ESA mission which will be to Jupiter, to the Jovian system. It's the JUICE mission that will take off in 2022. We have several more activities, but this is concerning exploration is one of our flagship missions in our activities. Okay.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Let's move to the other Nuno. Nuno Peixinho, please.
Well, good morning. I'm Nuno Peixinho. I'm an astronomer or a planetary scientist, if you prefer. My main field of work is the minor bodies of the solar system, mostly the ice-rich minor bodies of the solar system, those of the outer part of the solar system. I'm mostly a ground-based astronomer, so I use mostly telescopes, ground-based telescopes, and I'm also started to work recently in solar physics, and in which we collaborate also with the solar orbiter, and we work also on the effects of the space weather effects on the communications with satellites. and the GPS signal for let's say a society nowadays, since we are more and more dependent on communications with satellites. And I'm also the Portuguese delegate for the ISO users committee, in which we dialogue with the European Space Observatory regarding the observers and the use of the telescopes. And we attempted to use it to detect and study comets. And I was also part of a mission that was not approved by ESA to study an asteroid, but sadly we didn't pass. So I think I'm introduced.
Thank you, Nuno. So last but not least, we are going to Tim. I would ask you to introduce yourself, but also to let us know a bit more about the institution. I'm not sure how to pronounce the
ISECG, yes.
Okay.
No, perfect. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy and excited to be with you here this morning. So I'm Tim Haltigin, and I'm the Senior Mission Scientist in Planetary Exploration at the Canadian Space Agency. So my background is in planetary geomorphology, focusing primarily on Mars and asteroids. But today, I'm actually here with you in two different capacities. So as was just mentioned, I'm first here as a representative of the International Space Exploration Coordination Group, or ISECG. So this is a non-binding coordination forum of roughly 25 space agencies around the world that work together collectively to really advance human exploration throughout the solar system and to coordinate planning of a lot of these activities. So hopefully this experience can help address some of the topics today about the importance of international collaboration. We're a relatively small space program compared obviously with our neighbors to the south and NASA. And so with this, I may actually be able to bring some perspective on how, relatively smaller agencies can still play a really important role on the international stage. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion, and thanks so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Tim. So we went around the table. Let's just finish. I'm an astronomer, and I'm so that's why the task of moderating this panel is a nice opportunity for me also to hear your opinion on how the science and exploration program in ESA should be run by Portugal, right? Or should at least be defended by Portugal in ESA. Okay, so let's try to go through our agenda. But a little bit to the past. So also to understand how we arrived to the position we are today. So the important steps that have been taken in the past, the successes, but also the things that may not have gone as well as we would like. So that we can, above all, to take lessons learned from the past, so we can prepare the future. Space exploration is something that is still requires some development and some consolidation in Portugal. So I would very much like to hear your different experience on what we have done in the past that could help us to prepare the future. So perhaps among all of you, Nuno Santos may have a bit more experience on working with ESA, for example, and with ESO. So Nuno, start by giving the past, how we got here, right?
Well, that's a huge responsibility to start this. So thank you, Mario. I think not taking the risk of going too much back in time, but I think there's a very important moment for Portuguese space sciences. That was our entry in the ESO in ESO, okay? Because actually, I think ESO allowed us through its, let's say, example of competitive excellence and also giving us access to the best telescopes in the world and to the best instrumentation to actually create critical mass in astrophysics in general in Portugal. And not only just critical mass, but really competitive at international level critical mass. And I think this is our baseline, this was our baseline, and it is still today, to do the jump to other flights if I'm there. Of course, ESO also allows us one very important aspect, and allowed us in the past and in the future, is to get really involved in the development of astronomical instrumentation, which can be seen as a sort of a preliminary stage to also be able then to build astronomical instrumentation for space. And so I think ESO is really behind all the success, I would say, of our community in these fields. And so it's a good example of what, how to grow something that was barely existing 25 years ago.
But Nuno, if I may add, ESO has complete freedom to what science astronomers do, right? Space is not so easy, right?
No,
Space, so how do you think the community actually made that transition from ESO to ESA, for example, to actually explore space opportunities, right?
I think that I usually see ESO as the cake and ESA as the cherry on top of the cake. So to do the science that we do every day, and sometimes it's Nobel Prize science, it's not because it's ground-based that is lesser, but to do this baseline science, we need to have access to these ground-based facilities. And then when we grow the community, then we have the possibility to go into big consortia and to go into space somehow. And I think that that's the path that we have done over the past few years. So we started by basically observing with ground-based instruments and having access to the best instruments through ESO. And then we grew in terms of science and in terms of community. And then with this, we started slowly also having important roles in space-based, the progress of our community in this sense.
Then I would go perhaps to Patricia, because this is the other side of the coin, right? Is technological development and then more science related with the instrumentation and all that. Patricia, can you give us your view on the past, how we got here?
Actually, I was listening to Nuno, and I was thinking that we have a complementary experience as to relation with going from ESO to ESA, because at LEAP, we have the experience of going from CERN to ESA. And the difficulty is that CERN is a laboratory, like probably it's more like scientifically led, and you have a scientific purpose for whatever you do there. And ESA is an agency, and then in which you have the economic, the industry, and the industrial factor in. And the difficulty from going for more scientifically aimed objective and mission, or what you want to research or investigate, and put it in practice in ESA takes a big effort, and it was a real change of paradigm for our way of operating. And it took time to learn how to do this, but it was essential to convince the industrial community in Portugal, or part of it. So what I was mentioning, it was I had mentioned CERN and our experience and difficulty for going into to ESA, and then also that mentioning that it was very important to have the industry along. Well, and to convince them and to show them that it was really important to have the collaboration with academia in order to be able to have a intervention of quality in the projects that we are working on. From my point of view, I have more experience, as you mentioned, Mario João, in instrumentation, but also in some studies other than instrumentation. But what I think is, what we did was that we started working on housekeeping instruments, because it was much easier to start working in these technological developments than, for instance, participating in scientific missions. We also have colleagues in my lab that are working on instrumentation for gamma ray astrophysics, and they have proposed, they have entered several proposals for participating in different missions. And they are with international consortia doing this, and it has been extremely difficult to get this to put these missions in the air. So we have maybe we can discuss this when we talk about the future, but we are having this kind of problems. If you want to move into ESA, it's easier if you do it from the point of view not of science but of technology and housekeeping of missions. From the other side, if you want to go for scientific missions, you have to be really in a very strong consortium and have a really strong case. And it's very difficult to keep up with an activity where you don't get your mission in the air. So this is what my first impression about this, and I wanted to leave.
So I would ask the opinion of someone from the panel is more directed to space exploration, so solar system science and all those things. So, because in some sense, I think that the Portuguese participation in space is less strong if you think about space ESA, for example, in that field. So perhaps Pedro and Zita can tell us a bit more why in the past we tend to develop in a strong way astrophysics and not so much solar physics in Portugal. Do you think there is some underlying reason for that we can learn from the past when we prepare the future? Perhaps Zita, the lady first. Wait, I can.
So I've spent the nearly 20 years abroad in the UK and in the Netherlands and everything. So I came recently to Portugal, and all the space missions that I was involved with, basically I started to be involved with those space missions because I met colleagues. We wrote a proposal that's also important for people that are not on this field, and so right. I brought those missions to Portugal, and I came back. I think it is important to notice is it's also, I think we'll talk about that, but it's also the funding and for space agencies and also governments to see why is it important this sort of space missions. And I see a huge difference in the last 20 years, I have to say. I can't remember. And all of us that are in this panel, we are involved in different space missions. I mean, Pedro is involved also in so many space missions and everything. I think it is important that this has been a long road with lots of work that the community had to show that solar system missions were important. And what is the role of Portugal on this? And so the community is growing. But it has been a long road, and this road has been played not only from here, from Portugal. Again, my experience is mentioning that this was important for Portugal and keeping the bridges between where I was living and Portugal, because my goal was always to come back to Portugal. And I think that bat played off, but again, it has been a long way. And the fact that several of us are also in panels, in ESA panels, also helped a lot to build this importance. It was not just to have scientists in space missions in ESA, and I'm also part of several ESA panels, and also now I'm part of the European Space Science Committee. So again, it's another panel, international panel, where we can put the Portuguese flag and show the importance of Portugal as a key player in all of this planetary science and solar system. But again, it's not something that we build in 1 year or 2 years. It's something that we build in 10 years, 20 years, and it's a role that everybody that is here in the panel, people here that are participating, that are colleagues that did a brilliant job. So this has been a long, long road, and I think it's important to mention that it's decades of work. And why in the past it wasn't important? It's because lots of areas that we're talking about here. I mean, we have NUNU with exoplanets, we have astrobiology that didn't exist in Portugal, and I started with that. 20 years there was no astrobiology in Portugal. And so it is important that all of us, because there were no PhDs in that area, and this, one of the reasons why there was no involvement, Portuguese involvement in solar system missions, because also we didn't have people with that know-how. But I give the floor now to Pedro.
So I would ask a brief comment from Pedro, and then I want to hear Tim's view on what happened in Canada. But Pedro, please, because you have been building up. Rodrigo, can you give the voice to Pedro, please?
Yeah, sure. I think you can do it also, no?
No, I'm afraid I cannot. No.
Okay. Okay, Pedro.
So,
okay.
Well, when I was a student, I never felt that I was eligible for this space adventure. A big change that I see now in my students, for instance, is for them it's normal to go to the website of ESA, ESO, and others to look for job opportunities, stages, and so. So I think this is a major change and challenge for Portugal. Another thing that for me is a huge disruption is connected with engineering. What I see is a plethora of brand new small enterprises of space certified of very and world recognized today. And I think this is like an engine to push and to make a huge jump in Portugal and to make this change to move forward. So now what I feel in this new world for Portugal is that we can look on the eyes with the others and that we are complementary or we can share projects at the same level is what I feel in a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Pedro. Tim, can I go to you and Canada is a strong space participant for a long time. So you have developed over many years to come to this position. Can you give us some views, for example, were things more difficult for solar system exploration, for example, than for astrophysics, and how of the space program?
Sure. So Canada actually, surprisingly, was the third country in space. We were the third country to launch and operate a satellite in Earth orbit after the US and Russia. So with the Alouette satellite in the early 60s, you know, space exploration and space science in Canada started very much out of need. This was a communication satellite, and because we're such a broad country, we identified first the fundamental infrastructure that space can provide in terms of providing services to Canadians. So it started actually quite practically and pragmatically, more so than out of just purely exploration. So as the program evolved over the years, obviously there was the Earth observation and obvious benefits for terrestrial science. But as we started to look out to the universe and the solar system beyond as well, we realized that there was a lot more that Canada could be doing as well. So in terms of astrophysics, we actually had a very strong astronomy program and an astronomy community in Canada that was through our National Research Council, even before the formation of the Canadian Space Agency in 1990. And so there was a lot of, there was a broad community already, great strengths, and I think they were able to leverage, ground-based telescopes around the world as well. So it sort of gave a head start for astronomy over planetary science in the sense that there was a lot of existing infrastructure that could be used. There was been set with our National Research Council. But with the formation of the actual Canadian Space Agency in 1990, what happened is that the NRC retained sort of management of ground-based astronomy, and the CSA took over with space-based astronomy. So now we were looking for the observatories that were actually being launched into space. And the planetary program really almost had to start from scratch. So everything that we've been able to accomplish has really been done in the last, 30 years. As Zita said, to pick up on one of her points, it's starting to grow some of this experience and get experience in different disciplines that really allows you to build the community up. And so now if you look at the Canadian Planetary Program, it's still a lot smaller than our astronomy program, certainly, but we've been able to fly multiple instruments in space. We've got, on the Phoenix Mars lander with NASA, we have an instrument on the Mars Science Laboratory, and most recently with OSIRIS-REx to asteroid Bennu. So the planetary program really has grown, and I think what's really critical in that sense is identifying two things. One is, what are you good at domestically? What are some of your technical and scientific priorities and expertise within your own country? And really, it's a way to start making niches around in different missions. So, if you look at the Phoenix Mars lander, for example, we had a LiDAR, so a laser system that would point up into the Martian atmosphere, bounce off of particles, and basically we were doing and water profiling. But what happened is we actually took that technology and turned it upside down and turned it into a scanning LiDAR for OSIRIS-REx. So we've now made the most detailed 3D map in the history of space exploration on asteroid Bennu with virtually the same technology as we did to profile the Martian atmosphere. So, from that perspective, it's really identifying sort of your national expertise, your niche technologies where you can really carve out a place internationally. And secondly, it's very much about partnerships. Smaller nations by definition and by absolute need to partner internationally to fly some of these instruments. Yeah. And so identifying not only what your niche is, but also what are some of the opportunities internationally, and sort of pairing those two things together that really allows the space program to grow.
Good, thank you. That's a very useful insight. Perhaps this is the moment to move are the areas where we start to identify as being hotspots for us to intervene, and what is our international standing somehow. So what are the connections, what we have achieved, in what topics we can actually put our effort. We do have limited resources, and so I think it's important to look at the present and see where we want to focus our efforts. So perhaps I would like to hear on your opinion on these areas and the achievements we have. So where we are good, where internationally we have visibility. So let's start with Nuno Peixinho, please. So you are a solar system hardcore. So Rodrigo, Nuno needs voice, please.
I think it's okay now.
Thank you.
Okay, cool.
So thank you. The future, let's say.
Let's stay on the present, Nuno. Sorry to interrupt you. Let's stay on the present.
We are involved already, as they said, we are involved already in many missions. The hotspots seem, the hotspots seem to be those related with minor bodies of the solar system, like the Comet Interceptor is an example of that. So the study of those impactors, possible impactors on Earth, for example, which is of interest, and everybody is well aware of the Chelyabinsk accident in 2013, in which there were 1,000 people injured. And so there was a growing interest in as ESA classified the space situational minor bodies, and those that are potentially harmful for Earth, also potentially harmful things for satellites, which there are a lot, and also, okay, the environment around the Earth linked to to solar phenomena like the space weather. And those are the main things that, in my opinion, seem to be the hotspots now for regarding the research, and evidently that water is always the crucial element of most hotspot research that we can do here with space missions and in solar system, since well, evidently where there is water, there is a possibility, or there is a higher possibility for life, which interests astrobiologists, of course. But there is also a great, very interesting thing, which was a recent work that I saw. We always forget that, but water is the most precious element in space, since it costs $15,000 to send 1 liter of water to space. And if we can retrieve water in space from somewhere else in some way which costs us only $10,000, we are saving $5,000, and there are projects for that. It's very expensive water, but still it's extremely expensive to send water over there. So
But no. Can I ask you to focus on where we think Portugal can? I understand the topics you mentioned are important, are hotspots internationally eventually. But perhaps here it is also important that we understand where we are. So where we already have some capacity and some networks established already to actually intervene in a strong way. Where would you place that?
Oh, that I would say that since we need better connections between researchers and the companies, the enterprises, because there are already several companies working involved in space missions, and usually we don't communicate so well in researchers. So it happens a lot. We hear that some company got involved in working with the thermal shield of some space of the academia, or were not involved, for example. So that's the thing we should focus more. It's precisely communicating with those companies.
Thank you, Nuno. Perhaps I will move to Nuno, because Nuno Santos. Tell me how internationally where we stand as a community, a scientific community intervening in space sciences in general and also solar system exploration. Where we are.
I think, and going a little bit back into also what Tim said, I think we do have now very competitive teams in terms of the science, let's say, and we are also moving very quickly into the science instrumentation part. And this also in the past, we have good examples of how we managed, because of the science interest, to involve also the industry. And so taking also a bit what Nuno Peixinho said, what probably is missing a little bit now is really to make this continuum flow from the science to the industry and vice versa, to make the best out of the two opportunities. And this is something that can really give us, put us on the next level in this process. So as astronomy and projects, and to jump into major international projects. The industry on its side, they start to have also the capacity to do and intervene in space instrumentation and software. And what we probably need is to coordinate in the best way possible these two things, so that we take the best out of it, right? Take the best of the opportunities that science raises, but also use the industry to create opportunities for science participation. And so in this interface, I think, is one of the points that we probably need to improve for the future, to do better. But I think we are going in that direction, slowly but steadily, let's say.
But would you say that the visibility we have internationally is already helping us to be accepted and to be able to contribute to big projects? For example, solar system exploration, or?
I mean, I can speak more about exoplanets, which is more, it's also connected, of course, but I do think that the Portuguese teams, at least from the science side, they are now recognized as very relevant partners, and also from the instrumentation development point of view. And so, for example, in ground-based instrumentation, we built things for the VLT, instrumentation for the VLT, and this immediately granted us a very good position in instrumentation for the ELT further ahead. And so the same path can be done from ground-based to space-based. So ground-based can be a seed to go then to space-based, also in terms of industry. And I guess that the participation that we have today in the present day astronomical space missions can also be the seed for, in the future, let's say, let's dream a little bit, us leading an astronomical science mission, you know.
Well, we are here to dream, right? When we talk,
we are here to dream, and I think we can dream. There's a path to get there, and we should be, you know, understand how to get there. I often dream that one of the avenues is actually to guarantee in the short term, because we can do it already now, that we are able to lead one ground-based instrument for a major with all the industry that got together to build this, and then go to space. It's another kind of level. It's more difficult space because it's other kind of technologies. It's especially another level of costs that the country has to cope with if it wants to get there. And ground-based in that respect is much easier and cheaper. And so it's a good stage to prepare things for space, right? But I think
we should not delay the fact that we want to be in space also, right?
No, not at all.
I don't think we should interpret your message that way, right?
No. I think the two things should go in parallel. So we should be in major consortia in astronomical instrumentation and astronomical missions, but at the same time, get prepared to be one day leading these kind of missions, if I dare to dream, let's say. And so I think there's things should go in parallel, and I think we are going there slowly, steadily, but of course we need to get there. Maybe not just a few, but anyway, we need to do some more steps if we want to get there. But I think we are slowly going.
So perhaps these steps, one important thing that I feel is critical is human resources, right? We cannot do big things with few people. So perhaps because Zita was telling that she is the only Portuguese in this mission, which is an interesting mission of the science program. Can you tell me where we are regarding human resources, where we are missing people that we should perhaps give a priority, that we try to reinforce the community that can intervene in these topics, right? What is your view on that, Zita, please?
I think it's two things in here. First of all, we need to get younger people into this, and have the degrees to do it. I mean, so in this sense, public outreach is extremely important. I always give this case. I was example. I was still in the UK, and I remember giving a talk. This was very close to London, and at the end of my talk, three young students came to me and said, "Oh, I didn't know women could work on planetary science." So it's this thing of people actually not having this message. And again, it's a long path. And I'm not just talking about getting women into science. I'm talking about general people getting into astronomy, astrobiology, planetary science, etc. So the degrees in universities need to reflect this if we want to have more people working in space. That's point number one. Point number two, in terms of getting human resources, gets to be on the funding. And how are we going to get the funding to employ all those people? Obviously, we have funding for PhD scholarships. We have funding for other things, but we need more funding. And as Tim was saying, we are a small country, and so the pots of money obviously are going to reflect that, that we're not going to have funding like NASA or the US or other countries. So we need to be diverse. And I think one of the things is to create, and as it was mentioned here, partnerships with countries that have, I was going to say more know-how because they started before, and also more funding. And so one of the things, and now I put a different hat, it's also the partnerships, the international partnerships that our government has. So for example, I'm co-director of the MIT Portugal program. And so we have money actually to fund research in space. Space is one of our research areas, international strategic research areas. And so we have money for starting projects. And that's also one of the points that Nuno was mentioning, is building this bridge between academia and industry, which is extremely important. And also another point of this triangle is building bridges with American colleagues or colleagues based at MIT. And so we have small pots of money to kickstart projects in the area of space, among other areas, and also the flagship projects, which can be 1 million, 2 and industry to kickstart. And we see the flagship projects we had recently. We had a few in the area of space. This is just, again, a starting point. It's lots of work, but I think it's important to see what's there. And I think it needs more advertising for the whole community to know what's around. But I think it's a good point.
Thank you, Zita. Let's go back to Tim, if I may, because it's important here to understand. I know Canada has a very strong university programs in space sciences. That's clear. The big universities, they all have very strong space sciences programs. So, so how important is human resources? What is the size? Can you give us an idea of the size of the community? And also how important, because Canada is collaborating with many other countries in their space program, how important is this international collaboration?
Sure. There's so many good points to build on there. I could probably go on for an hour just on this, but so I think the first question was the size of our community and some ways we can help it grow. So our astronomy community in Canada is much bigger than the planetary community. Astronomy, if you include all faculty, researchers, graduate students, it's on the order of sort of 500 to 600 or so people, whereas in planetary science, it's a lot smaller. I'd say it's closer to 100, between 1 and 200 probably. But it's growing, and both are you know, they're finding their niches, as I'd mentioned before. And I think, you know, one of the really important points I want to just build on what I heard was partnerships, not only between industry and academia, but partnerships between industry and government and academia. It's actually all three that really play different roles, but they all have to work together to grow a successful space program. And so from our perspective, one of the things that we found most helpful in terms of, you know, starting small, but really, you know, aspiring to bigger things was contribute where you can. It doesn't always have to be the biggest thing right away. You can, you know, from a technology standpoint, there are missions where we contributed small subsystems, electronics, you know, not full instruments. And that gave our industry the ability to grow and to develop that capacity to sort of build bigger things in the future. Similarly with our scientists, it's not always big science teams that are with our instruments. Sometimes we fund individual scientists that have been invited to be co-investigators on international missions, for example. So it's a very inexpensive way of giving your community that hands-on experience from space missions that really you can't get any other way. And so we found that tremendously important in terms of when you want to grow your own domestic capacity, having those people go out and participate on different missions around the world, you know, for 2 years, for 3 years, for 5 years, whatever it may be, they bring all that knowledge and experience back, and it helps to sort of grow the collective community knowledge and know-how both in industry and in academia. So I think you know, again, talking about international partnerships and finding some of those places where you can contribute. I mean, participating in some of these international fora that exist, whether IMIWIG for Mars exploration specifically, a number of international astronomy groups as well. I mean, this is places where not only do you get a sense of what everyone else is working on, but it's a place for you to sort of establish what you want to focus on as well. And it's one of those ways that you can help carve out that niche, because, you know, nobody wants to duplicate effort. And I mean, you know, the trend of space exploration over the last number of decades is very much one towards more on their own anymore. It's everyone working together and finding what can they contribute and how do we all work together to sort of make the whole much greater than the sum of its parts. So I think, you know, again, highlighting, you know, domestically that sort of triumvirate between government, academia, and industry is important, but then taking all of that and placing it internationally as well is really important too.
Just a short question to complete. What you think is the reception or the view that society has in general in Canada and decision makers regarding the space science and exploration in Canada? So is there support? Is there a clear?
Yeah, no, in terms of public opinion, it's there. And I mean, we have the Canadarm on our currency. So, you know, it's highlighted, you know, every day in your pocket. I think that there's still a long way to go in terms of understanding what the benefits of exploration are as well. I think, you know, for things that affect your everyday life, like GPS and weather satellites, that it's very obvious. But when you're talking about astronomy and planetary science, sometimes that link between the immediate benefits is not always there. And so we've actually done some extensive studies on examining things like return on investment. And so for every dollar spent in astronomy, for example, actually is, I think it's 2.2 multiplier or something in the Canadian economy. So there's direct economic benefits of space exploration. There's the point that Zita mentioned in terms of public engagement. I mean, training students and just that wow factor of, you know, a new astronomy image coming down or people huddled around their computers watching a Mars landing. There's something just intrinsically exciting about that. So there's huge benefits for public engagement. There's also, you know, it's highly qualified people, space technology. These are some of your, you know, most expert scientists and engineers working throughout the country as well. So there's real, you know, sort of tangible benefits societally that don't necessarily affect your everyday life, but really sort of build up the fabric of both the economy and frankly, the excitement of the country.
Thank you, Tim. So let's explore a bit more, for example, the synergies with industry, where we are and what we are doing and what we can do further. So Patricia, perhaps you want to comment on all these topics?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's a lot of interesting points. There are a lot of interesting points here that have been already discussed. I think from the point of view, so I will get to industry, but from the point of view of understanding what are the fields in which we are strong, I think this conversation is already interesting. We have a diverse panel here, but I think in the indicators of where we are stronger and where we can go grow. And this is, I think it's a work that the PT Space could do or should do with our help, of course. So really we should identify these fields where we have critical mass and knowledge, as Timothy mentioned. And also very important here, since this space exploration is highly driven by industry as well, we should also and in which the collaboration between scientific partners in this industry can boost our national capabilities. And I think this is very important. It is also, again, work for PT Space because they have the instruments to do this identification and also to help promoting this consortium. Actually, Nuno Peixinho mentioned the difficulty with working with industry, but I think here PT Space can play a role. I also mentioned this difficulty before. It's really, but after some point where you work with the industry in your field, you start to know them and they start to know you, and then it gets easier. But I know it's not always easy. Then there's an issue in space exploration that Nuno was mentioning, because when we was talking about developing instruments for ground, and that the step for space gets more difficult because of cost, and not only cost, also in the industrial component strength of it, is that there is a very close connection between science and engineering when you go to space. And this is very important, and we need to understand that it exists, that it is there, and we need to have a plan to keep it, and this is fundamental. For instance, we need to train PhDs in these areas, both in science and in engineering, but then the problem here is something that it was already mentioned, is that we need to keep them, because since these people are very competitive, are experts, and the market is competing for them, not only Portuguese market, but especially outside Portugal, the market outside Portugal. And if we cannot be competitive and keep them, we will lose them, and then our critical mass we're trying to build up will be lost. So we need to have a plan to do this, and we need funding instruments to start to boost this. And we are from different areas. I'm from physics, Zita is from chemistry, we have astronomers here. So we need, for space exploration, there is no integrated program that puts together this knowledge. It's normal because we have very specific undergrad training, but I think that probably after we could have a higher level advanced training program that could put together these disciplines and try to build, probably at national level, because we are not so many, but we could try to build up capacity also in training, like giving this, having a program, and we could learn from international universities on how to do this training for a higher level after graduation. And this would be important. So there are a lot of things that we can do. But one thing in this training that is also very important, we should keep industrial partners with us, because they are aware of the problem of the engineering and technical problems that we have. So that the close connection between also university and industry has to be explored here. So there's a lot to do, but I agree in general with my colleagues of the panel.
Thank you, Patricia. There is indeed a lot to do, but that's good, right? We want to have things to do. Because you are one of these examples, someone that worked in really planetary science, so solar system atmospheres, and now you are leading a Portuguese effort in a mission that is really astrophysics, so it is exoplanets and atmospheres in exoplanets. For this transition, how things went? So is the idea to convert teams, so to take advantage area and put them together to actually build up a participation in one specific mission, like Ariel, which is the one you are leading. How does it work? How it went? How it should perhaps teach us a lesson on preparing more teams like that, right?
Well, it's true that planetary atmospheres is a solid item where we have been developing in the past decades. And we can see now that is spreading the contributions. And I would say that one of the basic things is the strong networking that we developed worldwide in the last decades, where our work is recognized. And so we are invited for being part of new missions. For instance, a new mission called Envision that is proposed and is in the shortlist for ESA, and we are invited to be part of it. And it comes from, they recognize that we developed methods, both twofold, from the ground-based, by the way, using very often not just ISO instruments like Espresso at VLT and others, but also, for instance, the Canada France Wide Telescope that I use very often, and is a great telescope. So thanks to. So I think that the major thing was, in one way, this networking, worldwide networking with key scientists from different countries, and on the other, end was, I think, some vision, in this case from Santos in our institute, that foreseen that a way back some years ago already, that atmospheres will be some transversal topic between solar system and exoplanets. That is now a new adventure that just began. So we have now worked on solar system atmospheres from Jupiter, Saturn, Titan, Mars, Venus, but also the small bodies as the dwarf planet Pluto or Triton. So for exospheres, of course, and from there we with exoplanets atmospheres research, and so that build our connection with Ariel and also in the solar system for new missions. So I would say that planetary atmospheres is a key topic in Portugal and is in fact is inclusive for, I think, all of us, because it's connected with astrobiology. Is so important as the new perhaps discovery on Venus about phosphine, but there is a lot of talk about that, as you know, but also on the detection and characterization of exoplanetary atmosphere. So the connection with exoplanets and all this knowledge is important, and back to industry, because these synergies will bring to Portugal investment, and from the products too, we have access to this industry here, and we help also to develop the space certified business and industries in Portugal. I would say mostly connected with optics in the visual, but also in the infrared, where we are very strong, but others. So this is something that is growing very fast now, but I will finalize just to share with you that one thing where I'm worried is stability, not about the investment. The investment on a research career that doesn't exist yet in Portugal is very, very important to develop, and to have this lobby at a government level in order to advise them that we need this stability. We lose a lot of time just to having granted our stability to go on. We are going, we'll keep the pace. However, they can help us on this. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Pedro. I would perhaps, before going the last round, ask Tim on how Canada does for preparing the future. Is there a political decision on what are the areas that will be funded, for example, will be the priorities? Is a community-driven process where the community just rearranges and then participates wherever they think is more interesting? Prepare in every present with the Canadian system.
No, definitely. I think you hit on a very, very key topic there, which is one of community engagement. We, on both the industry side and on the science side, are very keen on making sure not only that the community is consolidated, but understanding what their needs are and what their expertise are, and frankly, what their desires are. Because if you have a motivated workforce, both in industry and in science, there's a much better opportunity, much higher chance of finding opportunities for that worldwide. And so the Canadian process is, again, very much one of consultation. So we have standing committees that we interact with probably on the order of twice a year in all of our different space disciplines. So we have a planetary exploration consultation committee, a space physics, solar terrestrial, an astronomy one. And so these are with regularly to make sure that, you know, we keep them up to date on what the individual programs are that we're running, making sure that we're meeting the needs of the community there. In terms of our industry, we've got an industrial consultation committee as well, which is a consortium of multiple companies from around the country. Again, understanding where their expertise is in where they want to go. And so it's this constant play between understanding what the community is capable of doing and then using the agency almost as a broker where we can potentially put scientists or technologies. So that's sort of at the micro level, but then at the macro level, we also have periodic sort of more formal reviews in terms of what is our longer term strategy. So at the government level, we recently released the Canadian Space Strategy. This was, I guess, last year, that really set from a government level, what is the direction of the space program that we want to be going. For each of the disciplines, again, we have more formal workshops. So with the planetary community, for example, it's roughly once every 5 years that we say, okay, where do we want to be 5 to 10 years from now? And that influences the type of funding programs that the agency will put together. The astronomy community has their own decadal process to mirror the NASA decadal, to say, you know, where are Canadian astronomers at and where do they want to be 10 or 15 years from now. So it's really one very much of making sure that there are strategic sort of long posts that you're aiming for and constant course adjustments as you go along, because, you know, there can be deviations, but it's really important to do both. You can't just set a goal and hope you're going to get there, but you can't just micromanage and do this. You need that long-term vision, but also understanding sort of the mini steps that it takes to get there.
Thank you very much. That's a very useful view on how things could be done. So perhaps we are almost, we have to leave some time for questions, but regarding solar system exploration in 5-10 years. So where should the Portuguese community be looking for the future, right?
I think we should continue.
Not necessarily what you want. Let's.
No, I know. No. What I want is different. Yeah. I think we should continue to invest in what we started. As I mentioned before, it's been a long path. So now we should build on what we have now, and that means more human resources, more students coming to this field. More bridges between industry, academia, and government, as it was mentioned, and the missions that were already selected, they will be launched in 5 or 10 years. So we were, as Portuguese community, we are already part of those missions. Obviously, we will continue to write proposals and other missions, but let's think of what we have and invest in that. That's what I see, not exactly what I want, but what we see. And I think in that sense, the future is bright. I think there is lots of investment that have to be put into this, but I'm very optimistic. And I think the future is bright for this Portuguese community. And we just need to keep on investing on that.
Thank you very much. So perhaps finishing with the other side, which is Nuno Santos, which is an outside of the solar system astronomer, let's say, where we see us, where you see the bridges between astronomy, so outside solar system, and solar system exploration, where you think in 10 years we can build up stronger connections there, as Pedro Machado mentioned, for example. Briefly, Nuno.
Yeah, briefly. I always believe that it's usually in the interfaces that nice things happen and nice things grow. And this is an example. I mean, what Pedro, I say, plan to develop the interface between solar system and exoplanet atmospheres. I think it's one example to give. But I think if you allow me, I think if we want to grow, or if we want to be a key player in these areas, I think more important, one of the very important aspects is actually, well, first of all, we have to recognize that space sciences in Portugal are one of the areas that have more impact. And so many things are going well, and but we need actually to consolidate the funding processes that, first of all, must be predictable, should allow us to maintain the critical mass and the expertise that exists today, but also to grow in identified areas that are strategic, let's say, and allow us to think in the long term. And this has been, I'm very convinced that with PT Space we'll be able to go one step further here, because these projects, all these projects that we are talking about, they are projects that take 10, 15, 20 years to develop. And not only we cannot afford to lose what we gained, because that would be, if we lose something, then we go 20 years back. But also if we want to plan the future, we must have all the processes that allow us to fund and to think in a 10, 15-year time scale. And this is a challenge for the system, but this is absolutely necessary if we want to go to the next step.
Thank you, Nuno. Let's first see if there are questions. So, Nuno, Nuno Peixinho, I will give you the word. Let me just say this to the audience. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and we will try to give time to a few of you to ask your question. So if you have a question that you would like to ask online, please raise your hand so we can select a few of you to ask questions. So Nuno, you want to add something?
Yes, so I just like to add something that you heard a lot of us talking about human resources and stability and funding. But there is something that I'd like to highlight, maybe in the past 20, 25 years, basically all research in Portugal has been standing on the shoulders of, let's say, people with scholarships, grant holders with no work contracts. And only recently, some postdocs started to have a real work contract. Nonetheless, the system is still based in precariousness. So there are no staff positions, basically. So in the last 20, 25 years, staff positions were rare. And it's also very interesting, just to finish this story, that when recently here at my university, a few colleagues of mine and myself, we started to get involved in a project in solar physics, space weather, and space weathering. And one of the criticisms we got was that we don't have a lot of staff people with us. We are basically fixed term contract researchers. And so I realized maybe that's the reason why some fields of research in Portugal never developed themselves. For example, because there was never 20, 30 years in those fields. And so we can never grow while we don't have staff positions in those fields. And so that's very important for the present and for the future to really open staff permanent positions. Otherwise, I think there is no future. Basically, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nuno. We all agree that human resources are really the key. Without human resources, there is no space program, and to us also as part of that community to make sure that those opportunities are open and then things, whoever decides is aware of the needs. So one of the reasons of this discussion, I think, is also to identify what are the weaknesses that we have to overcome to actually build a successful future, right? I think we are at a good point, but we do have strong weaknesses, and definitely that is one. So how we are with questions, Rodrigo? Do we have anyone?
Mario, I'm not sure if the settings of this meeting allow people to raise hand. I have allowed anyone to unmute, so I propose that if anyone wants to speak, just unmute and speak.
And let's hope it goes well.
Yeah.
Any questions? I
Hello.
don't. Can you identify yourself, please?
Yes. Can you see me? Yes.
Yes.
So I'm Vaibhav Shah. I'm guest assistant professor in University of Minho, and I am also a researcher in AI since several years. But space science is my area of passion. Although I do not have specific experience in it, but I would like to contribute in it. And I understand very well that space science is not just about spaceships or space suits, but a lot of things happen, very tiny things that we do not even know. But a lot of inventions that we know came from NASA or other space agencies, like smoke detectors or things like this. There are so many things that there are byproducts of space science. My point is, and also as it was mentioned by Zita Martins, that there is funding available in MIT Portugal program for me and maybe for other researchers like me who want to contribute something in space science, and they have some skills necessary, but they do not know which problem, for example. So my question is from the other side. Normally we have proposals, we prepare proposals, and then we submit and we go for that. This is, for example, something different. Maybe we have some list of problems available in the whole spectrum of space science, and somebody like me could see, okay, I can maybe help in that, I can contribute in that, I can attack that problem and I can try to solve that. Is there some kind of repository available where we can see where we can see, or some resources where, for example, I do not know what exact problems are there to be solved. I can think about some fundamental research in AI about face detection, something different, etc.
Thank you. Perhaps I would ask Zita to tell us if, for example, this specific MIT program has some way to identify priorities, so areas where human resources could be involved.
Yeah, so we have four strategic areas. Space is just one of them. And artificial intelligence that we have received before, and also we had a call for PhD scholarships that closed over the end of the summer. So lots of opportunities for funding again. And what we've seen in all of that is that the applications, they're not just for one specific area. What we see more and more is that people are coming from different areas. Cities, for example, or digital transformation or climate change, conjugating all that with space research, etc. So the question you just put about artificial intelligence is just for you to contact colleagues and then again write a proposal for funding, but the proposal doesn't have to fit one strategic area, and that's the beauty of it. You can target different questions that you have and say, look, this fits in this strategic area, but also on this strategic area. And that is valued more and more and more. We don't want to fit just one of the boxes. That's also with more and more different areas that fit together to come together, especially because you are at University of Minho, as you mentioned, and our director, Pedro is there. So you may want to have a chat with them, and also our team, the rest of the team is also there. So just go ahead and have a chat with them. I'm sure they're always happy to chat with you.
Yes, we personally talk about this.
Yeah,
this
there you go.
Well, thank you. So more questions? If I don't have questions, I actually ask questions to the audience. So I see we have you as the coordinator, for example, of one of the institutes. Rui, you want to ask questions?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead then.
Hello, everyone. So I'm working in LEAP with Patricia. I work in Coimbra, so she already mentioned about our work in Coimbra. We are working on instrumentation for astrophysics in the high energy domain. So we have been trying to integrate missions, scientific missions of ESA. And so concerning what you were talking about, I agree very strongly with what you said about between scientists and the PT space, and also involving companies. I think this is very important. And concerning this, I have a very specific question, because when PT Space was created, like 1 month after, we got an email from PT Space saying that there was a workshop coming on the 4 days after that I could not follow. But they mentioned that there should be other workshops, specific workshops for different areas. And one of the areas was space scientists and researchers. As my knowledge, we never got this workshop. So this was in May 2019. And until now, I think there was no workshop. At least I was in the email list and I didn't got any information about workshop. Identify and refresh also what we are doing now, because the last time we meet together to define the Portuguese strategy, a lot of things happened and we need to refresh that document and include new things. So my question is, anyone of you know if this workshop meeting is around the corner, if we are going to have this discussion soon, because I think it's very important. And I just want to add something also that was very, very important that was mentioned here. It was by Nuno Peixinho, mentioning the problem with human resources. This is really terrible. This is a nightmare for us. We are very enthusiastic working this. I really love what I do, but it's a nightmare dealing with this problem. So if you want to do something that is more also healthy for us, because I have now colleagues that are starting to have being closed all the time. I think also in that domain, it should be very important to change the status of the human resources working in this area. And that's all.
Thank you, Rui. I don't have an answer regarding the workshop, but I think we as a community also have the responsibility to actually self-organize and do a workshop and arrange with the PT Space that event. I think it's more on our side than on them. I'm sure PT Space wants to have that workshop, and it was mentioned several times, but as a community also should be mobilizing ourselves to make sure it happens, right? But perhaps someone from PT Space wants to talk. Yes, Manuel?
Sure, I think I'll take that question to some extent. So Rui, it's good to see you again. We just had a talk, I think, last week. Of course, so first of all, apologies that this workshop has not happened. I cannot speak personally why this has not happened yet, because I'm not in the agency for so long yet. As you know, things are moving very dynamically with us. But I think, you know, taking the point from Mario, I think that's a really good suggestion. You know, we are very open to get suggestions from you. And if we forget something like that, then please be sure and approach us, because I think we're very happy to organize that workshop. And I think it's very important to do that. And maybe what we have been working on, so especially Marta, who's also in the meeting, myself, and also we've been in touch with Rodrigo, of course. We are running an effort to actually, you know, detail the strategy when it comes to science and also exploration in the future. And we are basically organize this effort and also organize a way to get feedback from bottom up from the community, right? And I think we should just stay in touch with that and have a separate meeting and talk about that, because I think that's a really important point. I think also Patricia mentioned that earlier, and so we are working on it, and we should be talking about that again in the future.
Thank you, Manuel. Marta, you want to speak?
Yes, I just want to reinforce what Manuel said, that we are working on a strategy. At least, you know, this session is the starting point. Obviously, we want to build on it and do also a workshop also to hear the whole of the scientific community, but yes, we are working on it, and hopefully very soon we can release a document and start a bigger discussion on this subject, so we can together try to build a strategy on science and exploration.
Okay, thank you. So I'm afraid we have come to an end. We could still discuss many things for a long time, but we have to finish. So I'd like to thank all the panelists, and in particular also to Tim from a long way to participate here and really give us very interesting advice and examples on how we could do. Thank you, Tim, very much. And thank you to all the other panelists for their contribution. Thank you for the audience. I hope you enjoy and you find this useful and productive. And I hope we can continue this discussion for many occasions in the future, so we build up together a future. Rodrigo, to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I don't have much to add. Thank you so much for everybody, Mario, all the panelists, and we will keep in touch as a community. I think that we must continue talking. So thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.